Tonight, are we overfishing our seas? Conservationists say a quarter of UK commercial fish stocks are being overexploited. Industry leaders warn it's a simplistic approach.
We do have annual advice because of the complexity of these issues and how much things change at sea, and fishing is one of the few variables that you can actually control.
Also tonight, patients treated in Aberdeen's A&E will be the first in the country to be routinely offered a potentially life-saving test for HIV and hepatitis. While in sport, Scotland boss Steve Clarke's calling on his players to rise to the occasion in tomorrow's World Cup qualifier with Greece. I'm Sharon Donaldson and this is the STV News at 6, live from Aberdeen. Good evening. As negotiations on next year's fish quotas begin, new data from conservationists suggests a quarter of UK commercial fish stocks are being overexploited. Oceana say tougher measures must be put in place, arguing trawlermen will benefit in the long term. But fishing bodies warn their advice is oversimplified. Well, Hayley Bomma is in Peterhead for us tonight. Hayley, this is a complex issue.
It certainly is, Sharon, and arguably the talks this year to decide on what fishermen can catch next year could be more important than ever, really. Back in May, we saw that deal being signed between the UK and the EU, allowing European boats a further 12 years access into UK waters, a move which was not welcomed by fishermen. Then a couple of weeks ago, we had the information come out from the scientific body ICES on fish stock levels. Now, ICES supply the information which governments and other coastal states look at when they decide on next year's quotas. That suggested a zero catch cod limit and a 70% reduction in mackerel that fishermen could be catching. This point on cod is a particularly big sticking point for the fleet because cod is a bycatch. It's not as easy as not including it in what you are hauling up. So today's data that came out from Oceana, which is a conservation organisation which many fishermen regard as an anti-fishing organisation, point that Oceana dispute, by the way, hasn't really been warmly met.
It's critical that the government ensures that there's a fair deal for fishers, whatever happens, particularly where there's a much lower catch limit, or in this case, potentially a zero catch limit, and supporting those fishers financially and economically, and potentially to diversify into other sort of fishing practices. That financial support is critical if the government is going to, follow this science, follow the advice.
What we need for 2026 is for governments to make decisions balancing all three pillars of sustainability. It's not just about environmental or biological sustainability. Of course, that's important, but it is the responsibility of governments to balance that with social issues and also with the economic issues. And that's what's critically important, and that's why it's a difficult job to do, and that's why it's for governments to do that and not for the likes of Oceana to decide what the answers should be.
Something that both sides do agree on, however, is that the scientific data is a complex topic, but it is also important to protect vulnerable species. And both sides do say that the Scottish and UK governments do really play a key role in making sure the correct advice is acting on when setting next year's quotas. Now, we've been hearing from the Shetlands Fishermen's Association today, who have added their voice to the arguments for this as well, saying that they have asked for a reduction in some catch for certain species in order to protect them. And the fishermen that I have been speaking to over the past couple of weeks are pointing out that they are very closely monitored on what they're catching, and that they're asking for the same sort of monitoring to be applied to foreign boats as well. Now, in the last couple of hours or so, we have also been hearing from the Scottish Government, who of course have a seat at the quota table as we go on for the next couple of weeks. They say that over the last 20 years, fishing in Scotland has become way more sustainable. They say that around 70% of the fish stocks that are being caught are now being done so in a sustainable way, and they're going to continue to progress that.
Hayley, thank you. Kemi Badenoch has wrapped up the Conservative conference in Manchester with a speech focused on spending and tax cuts as she tries to win back political momentum from the Reform Party. The Tory leader has been under pressure at her first party conference in charge, as our Westminster correspondent Paris Goutsianis now reports.
Conservatives gathered in Manchester have been smelling the coffee. With Nigel Farage's Reform Party steaming ahead, some Tories worry their best days are behind them. Kemi Badenoch's job was to inject some energy back into her party and silence those who say what the Conservatives need is a change of leadership.
A weak economy and weak borders means steady decline. I reject that fate.
The Tory pitch on the economy comes with £47 billion of spending cuts, half of that on welfare.
Labour, Lib Dems, Greens, the Nationalists and Reform are all demanding more welfare spending. They don't care that it's not fair, but we do.
Kemi Badenoch also promised to re-energise Scotland's offshore industries.
We chose a slogan of net zero over a serious strategy for a stronger economy and a better environment. So I am saying enough. I am reversing this. So when it comes to the North Sea, we have a very simple policy. Drill our oil and gas now.
Half of all savings would go towards tax cuts, including one surprise announcement.
Conference, the next Conservative government will abolish stamp duty on your home.
The Scottish Tories say they would also scrap the tax on sales of main homes if they won power in Scotland. Is that going to take the fight to reform in Scotland?
I think it certainly will. We need now Russell to back that up with some of the policy announcements that are for the Scottish Parliament.
The number of mentions that we had for oil and gas industry, for farming, things that I'm so passionate about for North East Scotland in particular, but Scotland as a whole. It was a fantastic speech, a fantastic plan, and I'm so ready to go out and sell her message.
The SNP today are launching, guess what, another blueprint for independence. By contrast, this is a really fresh, exciting agenda, a proper blueprint to how we can lift the country to new heights.
Kemi Badenoch will hope that that speech is done enough to silence her critics and take back momentum from reform. But the Tories still face tough elections at Holyrood next year. This was her first conference speech. Some will still be asking if it's her last. Paris Gortsianis, STV News, Manchester.
The First Minister says devolution has reached its limits and claims independence could improve living standards in Scotland. Opposition politicians dismissed the Fresh Start with Independence paper as detached from reality. John Swinney said self-government was working for people.
In a context where living standards are stalled in the United Kingdom and that people are living on net income, which is that's been stagnant for years, a new constitutional structure with the opportunities that our international neighbours enjoy, that combination of independence and EU membership is a pathway to enabling individuals to have higher living standards.
Patients who receive blood tests at Aberdeen Royal Infirmary's emergency department will now also be tested for HIV and hepatitis B and C. It's the first hospital in Scotland to roll out the programme. Oliver Wright has the story.
In an emergency department like this one, getting a blood test is something most patients wouldn't think twice about. And the way those tests are being done is changing. Aberdeen Royal Infirmary is the first hospital in the country to roll out opt-out testing for blood-borne viruses. And so far, it's been working.
There have been multiple people living in our population that sadly do have one of these viruses, which are completely asymptomatic in the early phases. But if we can detect them when they're asymptomatic and link the patients directly to care, either through the hepatology team or HIV teams, these patients can be started in treatment earlier and minimise complications and save lives.
Patients will have the option to decline the extra tests if they choose. If the results come back negative, they won't hear of it again. Positive cases are followed up by specialists in the relevant departments to help patients get the right care they need.
This test is followed up by a different team, so it's not the A&E team. They will receive all the tests and do all the follow-up. So if you were getting discharged from A&E, you most likely won't get the result. Well, you won't get the result there and then. You will be followed up. So no news is good news, but it won't delay your patient journey or delay any treatment or anything like that if you were in accident emergency.
Viruses like HIV can be passed from person to person through things like unprotected sex or sharing needles. Often, in the early stages, people with the virus don't have any symptoms. Charities supporting those living with HIV say the new approach to testing is welcome.
This measure will help find and identify people and get them onto treatment and care. HIV treatments come leaps and bounds since the 1980s with days of tombstone adverts. Today, a person living with HIV can live a long, happy and healthy life if they're on effective treatment and can't pass the virus on to others. That means we can end new transmissions of HIV by 2030, and that'll be the first time a virus has been ended without a vaccine or without a cure.
The initiative is part of a Scottish Government drive to eliminate hepatitis C, end new transmissions of HIV and treat people living with hepatitis B. It'll be rolled out across Scotland in the coming months. Oliver Wright, STV News.
The father of a Scot who died in Thailand has branded the Scottish Government's response to his death as shambolic. He says a legal loophole is blocking them and hundreds of other families from getting information and closure. Davy Cornock from Montrose was told his son David's death did not meet the threshold for a fatal accident inquiry. Here's our political reporter Laura Alderman.
Davy from Montrose will never forget the last conversation he had with his son David.
He was in a pub in Thailand having his roast dinner, a Sunday roast dinner. That's the last time I spoke to my son, and I can still hear his voice, you know.
In 2019, David was living in the Southeast Asian country with his young family when he was found dead one morning. Thai authorities said David died by suicide, but Davy believes he was murdered. The family were told they didn't meet the threshold for a fatal accident inquiry here because David wasn't ordinarily resident in Scotland when he died.
After you repatriate to Scotland, your chances of closure, justice, insurance are finished. This government in Scotland has been shambolic. We've been at the First Minister, Justice Minister, Lord Advocate. The Lord Advocate and Justice Minister need to sit in a room. One blames the other. David's young fella now is 14. He's asking what happened to my dad, granddad. It's only you that know. I really don't have any answers to give. We're just going to be stuck in an unending limbo with, I guess, unending grief.
Not a single fatal accident inquiry into the death of a Scot abroad has been launched since the law was changed to allow it in 2016. Julie from Glasgow was heavily involved in that campaigning at the time. Her son Colin died on holiday in Venezuela in 2009.
It's horrendous. It's 16 years and it still feels like yesterday. It still feels like yesterday. There's got to be a kind of clear, concise roadmap for anybody that this happens to, you know, whether it's an individual person or organisation, but there's got to be a clear roadmap to each step that these families can take.
The calls of Julie, Davy and other bereaved families were heard at Holyrood today.
It's absolutely clear to me that the law has failed, it doesn't work, and that we need a new law to replace it. I think there's lots of ways that it could be approached. In England, for instance, they have a situation with coroner's inquiries that actually between 200 and 400 deaths of English people abroad result in inquiries that are available to people. So some of those are reasonably light touch, that gives people some of the answers that they actually need. There could be an equivalent system in Scotland, but I don't think what we can agree on is that what we have at the moment is not sustainable.
I think people need to understand, exactly, if I do choose to live abroad, what protections can I expect from the government that I've left behind? And I think, there's a communication piece there across both governments, and I'm glad that both governments are communicating better in this regime now.
The Crown Office says it has limited jurisdiction to investigate deaths that occur outside Scotland, and any changes to the law would be a matter for Parliament. Even with cross-party support, families speaking here today said they're all too aware of how slow the wheels of legal change can turn and how long their wait might be for answers. Laura Alderman, STV News, Holyrood.
The Scottish Government has faced questions over how it's supporting Police Scotland following reports of rising knife crime in Dundee over the summer. Local Labour MSP Michael Mara raised the issue at Holyrood this afternoon. In response, Justice Secretary Angela Constance said recorded crime in the city has fallen 3% over the past 4 years, with 1,500 new police recruits joining the force since the start of 2024.
We, of course, remain vigilant about tackling any crimes of violence which can cause devastation for families and communities. And we are providing Police Scotland with increased funding of £1.64 billion this year and have invested £6 million in the implementation of the violence prevention framework over the past 3 years. This year, that includes up to £1.2 million for the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit and nearly £300,000 for the delivery of Youth Links Scotland's No Knives Better Lives programme.
Now, charities and organisations across Fife are calling for poverty to be better recognised to ensure more people can receive the support they need. Today, a conference as part of Poverty Action Week highlighted the levels of poverty in rural areas of Fife. Charities say the cost of living crisis means many people across the kingdom are struggling. With more, here's Vanessa Kennedy.
Martha lives in Glenrothes, where she's a single mum of 3. She says the rising cost of household bills and food costs means every day can be a real struggle.
The true terror of being like, I don't know if I'm going to get through this week, and I don't know who to reach out to if I can't. You're watching like your electric bill go up constantly. You want your kids to be full and go to bed happy and full, and sometimes that means that I'm having toast whilst they're having big full meals, but that's I guess that's like the sacrifice you make. But the fact that that's a normalised thing isn't okay.
Martha received support from the charity Fife Gingerbread, who helped her identify which benefits she's entitled to. The charity also provides both lone parents and families in need with a range of services to help them with housing, work and money advice. And they say they've seen an increase in demand.
Some of our recent data told us that 70% of the families we're working with are surviving below low income thresholds. And what that means is on a daily basis, mums and dads are making really difficult decisions, the impact on mental health and well-being for the whole household. And that is a real restriction to families being able to progress and move forward in their life. And they often feel really stuck in those circumstances.
This conference held today in Cooper highlighted the additional challenges those living in rural Fife face.
It's the additional cost of your food shop. It's the more expensive fuel costs, or the fact that you might have to rely on having your own car because public transport is so scarce or unreliable. It's the additional costs of decent broadband to get connected. What we're finding is the kind of impact is that you've got perhaps older people living in your communities that can't cope with the costs of getting to GPs, they can't get to the dentist. It's even the additional costs that are incurred just for a simple trip to the supermarket, and it is something that we do need to work together on to try and make things better for everybody.
The hope is that by highlighting the financial challenges faced by people all across Fife, decision makers will prioritise targeted supports to help tackle the rising cost of living that impacts so many. Vanessa Kennedy, STV News.
Well, it's time for all the sport now. Here's Chris.
Your window to sport. C.R. Smith sponsors STV Sport.
Good evening. Well, Steve Clarke's calling on his players to rise to the occasion against Greece tomorrow and says they should treat this campaign as their last chance to make it to a World Cup. Well, Scotland sit second in Group C, just a point ahead of the visitors, with Scotland's Ryan Christie admitting the squad are looking for revenge after defeat to the Greeks in March. Here's Ronnie Charters.
There's no place like home for Steve Clarke and his Scotland squad. After their opening 2 qualifiers away, the Scots now get set for a Hampden double-header to continue their positive start. These players have the weight of history on their shoulders, looking to become the first national team since '98 to qualify for a World Cup. And from Clarke himself, a rallying call.
Obviously they know that they've managed to qualify for 2 tournaments, they've been at 2 tournaments. They understand how close they got the last time in the World Cup campaign. It was a really good qualifying campaign. The playoff game didn't go our way. And they feel that they should have already had that World Cup experience, but they haven't. So if you look, it's 1998 since we were last there, so every chance we have to look at is our last chance. So why not do it this time?
In a late call-up, right-back Max Johnson has been added to the squad after initially being left out of this double-header. In terms of the opponents, you only have to go back to March for the last time the Scots lined up at home against the Greeks, and it didn't go to plan. A 3-0 defeat in the Nations League playoff second leg relegated the Dark Blues, and one man who was in the team that night is eyeing redemption.
Obviously that was a frustrating night for us. We've definitely watched clips from that game in terms of trying to learn from it and where we can, avoid the mistakes we made on the night and, hurt them a little bit more. It's a team we know obviously that we can beat. There's a chance for tomorrow night to put things right that what happened in March.
Well, for these Scotland players, 3 of their remaining 4 qualifiers are here at the National Stadium, starting of course with Greece on Thursday night. The last time the Greek side came here to Mount Florida, the Dark Blues tasted defeat, but Steve Clarke and his men have built a good platform in this group so far with 4 points out of the first possible 6. 3 points tomorrow night would be huge as Scotland look to the USA, Canada and Mexico, and a win here at the National Stadium, and it's fair to say our World Cup dream is certainly alive and kicking. Ronnie Charters, STV Sport at Hampden Park.
Oh, Ronnie's got me right up for it tomorrow. Now, Scotland women's head coach Melissa Andreatta believes Caroline Weir can be an inspiration to the nation's youngsters. The Real Madrid midfielder, who's been capped a whopping 112 times, became the first Scottish woman to be nominated for the Ballon d'Or.
World-class player, but a genuine top human being. Loving working with her and all the other players around her, but she's so down to earth. I love the football conversations we have together. They're in depth, they're detailed, but she's. I don't know what else to say about her. She's an excellent human being.
Now, New Ross County goalkeeper Trevor Carson says the chance to challenge for promotion to the Premiership was a big pull in his move to Dingwall. It comes as the Staggies secured their first win of the season, setting up a huge game against St Johnstone in Perth this weekend. Here's Stephanie Daly.
9 games into life in the Scottish Championship, Ross County finally got their first win with a 2-0 victory at home to Raith Rovers. Having kept a clean sheet, new Staggy stopper Trevor Carson switched Dundee for Dingwall with the aim of winning promotion.
I've obviously worked with Simon Murray at Dundee the last year or so, and Si couldn't have spoken any more highly of Ross County, the people, and and I guess for myself to come and obviously at the time when I did sign, we're bottom of the league, but for me, you look at the squad, and I'm more than confident they've got enough to challenge up the top end of the table, and for me, that's exciting. Coming towards the end of my career, hopefully plenty of time left, but the latter years of my career, I want to be challenging for trophies and promotions, and that was definitely a big pull.
And with a dream debut for on-loan Dundee United youngster Miller Thompson, manager Tony Docherty believes he now has the right blend of youth and experience.
It's important you get a balance between the, I call the older players that are kind of cultural architects, if you like, but you need your young, energy, enthusiastic, talented boys, and from my experience that makes a good blend. And at the moment, looking at the squad that we've got, there's a real good atmosphere about the place because there is that proper blend of experience and youth.
County are currently 16 points behind runaway league leaders St Johnstone, but the two sides go head-to-head at McDermott Park on Saturday, just as the Staggies feel they've found form.
I feel as if we're motoring now, and particularly after Saturday's victory against a good Raith side who were the on-form team alongside St Johnstone. So it just gives us an opportunity now to take our momentum from Saturday's game into this one. And it's very much cliche, but it's game by game. We're not looking at anything bar St Johnstone at the moment. And hopefully we've done a lot of good work this week on the training ground and in the analysis room, and hopefully we can take that to a good team at St Johnstone who are on form and execute a game plan that gives us every opportunity to pick up points.
Stephanie Daly, STV Sport.
That's it from me. I'll be out the studio and at Hampden tomorrow. See you then.
Your window to sport. C.R. Smith sponsors STV Sport.
Well, let's see what the weather has in store for us. Here's Joe Farrow.
An icy start to the day will give way to a series of oohs and ahs. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Hello. For the middle of the week, we keep this westerly flow. Now that's coming in off the Atlantic. It's bringing a lot of cloud damp weather for western Scotland, but for Tayside there's been some real shelter, and we'll see the temperatures responding as we go through Thursday. High pressure is trying to build its way in. It will by the end of the week. So northern parts hold on to a really brisk breeze, but as this reaches across Scotland, then we will be seeing more settled weather. That's going to last for the weekend, and we will see some chilly nights. As we go through tonight, there's wet weather across western Scotland, and that's heading its way southwest, but it does leave for eastern Scotland some fine weather. And actually where we see clearing skies, temperatures could fall away into single figures. Many areas stay around 10 or 11 through tonight, and just beginning to see that brisk breeze easing off. By the time we get to the morning, there will be a band of cloud across Tayside through the central belt, and that's that frontal band. That pulls away down towards the south, and we begin to see some fine, bright weather. The sunshine appearing, and then the temperatures will be responding. So generally, we should be closer to 11 or 12 Celsius, up to 16 as we go through Thursday. And then on Friday, there's the high pressure, settling that weather down. We're going to see a lot of sunshine for eastern areas, and temperatures up to 16. Goodbye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
That's it from the STV News at 16. Good night.